AI tribal warfare. One of the factors that contributed towards the first and indeed the second AI winter was the infighting operating within academia. Pedro Domingos, himself a somewhat controversial figure, has described how there are five different approaches to AI, five different tribes, as he puts it, and it's the tribal infighting, perhaps, that led to this problem. Of the five different tribes, by far the most significant are the symbolists and the connectionists. The symbolists use symbols, rules, and logic to represent knowledge and draw logical inference. The connectionists, meanwhile, have a model based on the brain itself. They're the ones who have promoted neural networks, artificial neural networks based on the neural networks on the brain. They recognize and generalize patterns dynamically with matrices of probabilistic weighted neurons, in inverted commas. Alongside the symbolist and the connectionist, there's also the Bayesians, who assess the likelihood of an occurrence for its probabilistic inference, the evolutionaries, who generate variations and assess the fitness of each for a given purpose. They're the ones who use genetic algorithms, and then the analogizers, who optimize a function in light of constraints, and so on. So the history actually of AI started off before even Alan Turing had conceived the possibility, with some speculation about the brain itself, about neuroscience. Walter Pitts, himself a somewhat colorful and controversial character, and Warren McCulloch produced a paper in 1943 called a logical calculus of the ideas immanent in nervous activity that sought to model and understand the operations of the brain. This, in many ways, was the origin of connectionism, the approach to AI, that is modeled on the behavior of the brain. There were, however, two incidents that disrupted the advance of connectionism and called it into question, and led to the eventual triumph of symbolism over connectionist AI. One of them was the publication of a book by Marvin Minsky and Seymour Papert on perceptrons, a very early form of connectionist approach towards AI, where they basically called into question the possibility of there being any real potential future in perceptrons. They claim afterwards, when they were attacked for being so scathing about the connectionist approach, that they hadn't intended to do so much harm, but in effect, it did have a lasting consequence. The second incident was the tragic death of Frank Rosenblatt, the guy who had developed perceptrons and the leading figure at the time, in a boating accident in 1971. Together, then, this led to the demise of connectionism, at least the initial demise of connectionism, and the triumph of symbolic AI. Since then, of course, there have been a number of developments. There have been particularly in terms of the number of layers you might get in a neural network, so that what we have in connectionism now is something that has proved to be extremely efficient and much more than successful in the initial experiments in the field. However, for a while, this led to a situation whereby anybody who was working in the field of connectionist AI had to somehow disguise the fact that they were working in this field. Geoffrey Hinton claims that in subsequent years, he and his colleagues working in connectionism were forced to resort to the logic of camouflage and scrub any reference to neural networks in order to get any academic papers accepted. That, of course, is no longer the case. Connectionism is in the ascendancy again and has proved itself to be highly effective. In fact, deep learning itself, the most advanced form of AI, deep learning itself is part of machine learning, which is part of the broader category of AI. Deep learning is based on neural networks, and that is where all the recent success lies.